Hi, this is Aaron's. So if you have a luxury watch that you want to
The MoneyWeb Crypto Podcast, where we discuss all things crypto related. Your host, Kieran Ryan.
Two big events occurred over the last week: the Bitcoin halving and the issue of licenses to crypto asset service providers. There's no question that South Africa is fertile ground for crypto scams, which is why licensing is such an important development. It probably won't completely solve the proliferation of scams, but it will help. Ordinary people now have a way of separating the good guys from the bad. Whenever approached to invest in crypto, the first thing they should probably do is see if the company is licensed with the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. The question is, will they? That's a question that's still got to be sorted out, I guess. Then there's the Bitcoin halving, an event that takes place every 4 years. And that means basically the rate at which Bitcoin is issued is cut in half, and that happens every 4 years. That's something built into the Bitcoin protocol to make it scarce, and it has traditionally been associated both before and after the halving by a surge in the Bitcoin price. The question is, will it be different this time? Well, to unpack all of this, we're joined by Binance Country Manager for South Africa, Hannes Wessels. Hi, Hannes. Good to talk to you again.
Hi, Kieran. Good afternoon. Good to speak to you guys.
All right, let's pick up on the Bitcoin halving. It's happening right as we speak, today or tomorrow, around about now. And what we find is that the price of Bitcoin has dropped. Bitcoin enthusiasts will know what the Bitcoin halving means, but for those who don't, maybe just explain what that is and what has this historically meant for the price.
Yeah, that's right, Kieran. So as we speak now, we've got about 11 hours to go, which is not really that important. More important is the number of blocks remaining, which is about 77 out of 840,000. So that's quite significant. It will be somewhere today or tomorrow. Obviously, depends on how long these blocks take. Just specifically, some blocks take about 5 minutes. Some blocks can take about 20 minutes. It depends on the volume in the market at that time.
Just pause there a second and explain what you mean by a block for people who don't know this.
So Bitcoin, the algorithm mines Bitcoin in blocks, which means there's a set number of Bitcoin transactions being verified by what we call the miners. The miners obviously being the independent parties who verify transactions without having sight of the others. That's one of the biggest features, and one of the features that gives Bitcoin its trust, that these miners do not know who the others are until the block is mined. And for that, they receive an award. So you then have these blocks, but there's a reward per block. Now, I normally look at this on a per day basis, and on a per day basis, generally you get about 900 new Bitcoins mined. And that number, once we get to the halving, then halves to 450, hence the term halving. And I think at this stage, well, for each of these halvings, that has been significant because the number of new supply of Bitcoins coming into the system is therefore halved. And if you look at how the algorithm that you referred to has been designed, this will continue halving. So really a limited supply and a diminishing supply of the remaining Bitcoins to be mined, which makes this a very scarce asset.
Okay, so when the Bitcoin is halved, it's currently being issued at the rate of about 6.25 Bitcoin per 10 minutes, right? That's when each block is basically is filled and the miners solve. There's a mathematical puzzle that they have to solve, and the one who solves the puzzle gets the reward. That goes down to, from 6.25, it'll go down to 3.125 Bitcoin being issued every 10 minutes. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the 10 minutes is an estimation. Again, it depends on market volume at the time, but you can roughly work on about 10 minutes. And obviously, you then extrapolate that to a 24-hour period, you get to roughly 450.
Yeah, and people might be a little bit confused by the term miner because these are all done by computers. They're very, very sophisticated computers that work at a fantastic rate of speed. They're doing trillions of transactions per second, as I understand it. So, and you've got tens of thousands of these, and they call them nodes. They're all over the world that are competing to solve these mathematical puzzles so that they can get the Bitcoin reward.
That's right. And a lot of them, Kieran, are now listed on the Nasdaq exchange. I think there's about 8 of them listed as firms. And they then, each firm will have a couple of these, what they call mining farms in various locations. Now, that's also significant because you can now be a public shareholder in one of these miners. I personally track some of their supply and their activity quite closely. And you can see a lot of them has hold on to their Bitcoin because they expect there to be positive price action after the halving. But they will also have to sell some of this Bitcoin at some stage because they need to cover their operational expenditure, which is also important. But it will change the landscape. And I think what's important is that once the amount of Bitcoin then halves, I think we know it becomes less lucrative for them to do so. So that will have its own impact on the industry. What should be mentioned as well is then if less parties mine Bitcoin, the algorithm and the difficulty of the algorithm actually resets backwards. So there's never a case where no one mines Bitcoin. It becomes more lucrative again there.
I think it should also be pointed out that now that we're at the halving, you say we're 11 hours away from it. By the time this is published, it'll be past. Every 10 minutes, the amount of income that you're going to receive is cut in half. And, that's quite drastic. So there might be a lot of miners who pull out of the mining game. This is traditionally what has happened because it's just too competitive. And then, as you pointed out, the degree of difficulty, that's something that's built into the Bitcoin protocol. It's algorithmically plugged in there. That will increase or decrease depending on the amount of miners that are active. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. So that's one side of the equation. The other side that I think takes longer to solve is obviously technological advancement and how each of these rigs become better and better. Now, again, there's a CapEx requirement for the miners where they need to continue investing in these rigs. And therefore, there's also a depreciation issue that needs to be considered. So it's quite a dynamic business model. You can see all the variables that you need to balance here. But yeah, a lot of stuff that needs to be taken into consideration. But I think that in itself gives the market its own dynamic, and that part of the market therefore resets if the volumes fall too drastically.
All right, so talk about what this has traditionally meant for the price of Bitcoin. If you go back over previous halvings, there's been bull markets both before and after the halving, right?
Yes, so in crypto terms, folks talk about crypto spring and crypto summer. Traditionally, then summer starts once the halving is over, and summer lasts until we get a new all-time high. We obviously won't know when that is, otherwise none of us would be here. But previous cycles clearly indicate that increase could be as much as 4 times the price of Bitcoin at the time of the halving. Please, not financial advice. I don't have a specific level that I'm aiming for, so therefore can't give you one. But I think anecdotally, there's a lot of strong data that shows you that 4x level in previous halving cycles was achieved.
Okay, that's interesting. And of course, there are a lot of predictions out there for Bitcoin based on historical trends, which of course is no indicator of what's going to happen in the future. But yes, some are seeing that the Bitcoin price up at 140,000 by the end of the year, dollars I'm talking about. Others see it even higher. But we've actually experienced a drop in price. Why have we experienced a drop in price in Bitcoin? It's about 10% over the last week.
Yeah, slightly more if you look back about 10 days, but a very good point. So we have seen an institutional adoption, obviously, in the beginning of the year, towards the end of January, where the US ETF market started adopting the asset. There was a lot of net positive inflow, but there was one particular player in the industry called the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. If you go for those who have Bloomberg GBTC. This is a trust formed many years ago where a lot of folks put Bitcoin in, but because it wasn't an official ETF, they couldn't sell those Bitcoins. And then when the trust was legalized, I can say, a lot of folks, including some of the liquidators and some of the exchanges like FTX, then sold these coins. Obviously, they had to get their money out of it. That has resulted in initially quite a big outflow, and then the likes of Fidelity and BlackRock has seen good adoption in the US. That has tapered off a bit, So both sides has tapered off. The exodus from Grayscale has tapered off a bit, but also the new inflows into predominantly BlackRock and Fidelity also. So the pure demand coming from that has tapered off a bit. A lot of this stuff happens through the OTC desks. I think in South Africa, the best known one is obviously 5 West, but a number of these across the world. And that has tapered off a bit as well. I think something for those who want to do their own research, something to track is the available amount of Bitcoin on OTC desks and on the exchanges. That number has dropped quite significantly. So that needs to be tracked. And then from a general perspective, there are other players in the market as well. There's an anonymous party now known as Mr. 100, who during this time bought 100 Bitcoin every day. And now that the market's down, they buy anything from 400 to 800 Bitcoins, which is really significant if you look at the amounts. And I mean, the question is, who's that? We know it's not one of the ETFs because their wallets are known. That could be a sovereign nation. You can imagine the consternation if it turns out that, say, a Middle East country has been buying Bitcoin for a while. So all of this, to your question, all of this determines the price. But I think from this point onward, we can expect positive price action.
Yes, I mean, I think if you look at the ETF adoption, it's been reported just in the last few days that the institutions own approximately about 4% now of Bitcoin. Doesn't seem like a lot, but of course that figure will grow. But at the same time, you're probably going to see some tightening in liquidity. In other words, people in anticipation of a price rise are likely to hold rather than sell.
I fully agree, Kieran. And I think what you need to look at is at the height of the ETF adoption, the amount of Bitcoin bought every day divided by the new Bitcoin, number of new Bitcoins mined every day. I mean, that multiple at some stage was 14x. Now, the denominator there goes from 900 to 450. Well, we expect, obviously, there's a lot of, at the time when we did this podcast, there was talk of war between Iran and Israel, etc. That always has a negative impact on risk assets such as Bitcoin. But take this away, you have an increase in the numerator and a decrease in the denominator. That only has one thing to say and one thing to point out, and that's positive price action.
Let's talk about the CASP licenses, crypto asset service provider licenses. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority started issuing them in the last week or 10 days. And if I'm not mistaken, most of the exchanges, crypto exchanges in South Africa now have these licenses. How will this change things? And I mean, Binance, you're operating under a jurisdictional license with 5 West. Is that correct? Or are you applying for your own license?
Both, yes to both. So it's a bit of a double yes question. So to answer the first question, yes, we have applied for our own CASP license. We were later in the process, and I think as mentioned on MoneyWeb itself, there was 3 batches that was considered by the FSCA, so we were in the 3rd batch. We working very closely with the regulator. I had a call with them this morning to work through some of the remaining questions they have, so that's all going well. So yes, to the first question, we have applied for our own CASP license. To the second one, yes, we also work through a juristic partnership with 5 West on our derivatives product. That's for futures and options. We are by quite a healthy margin the largest provider of derivative products amongst exchanges in the world. And that same product is available to users in South Africa. That arrangement with 5 West, they've had the FSP license way before the process started. So that arrangement goes back before the application window opened. And it's one that works well for both of us. It works well for 5 West and it works well for Binance. So we intend to keep that. And it provides a very healthy platform for users on which to access these products from South Africa.
Right. And then the question is, how is this going to change the crypto landscape in South Africa with these licenses?
The very important point, Kiran, that I want all users to note is that it gives you access to a regulator. If you feel you've been treated unfairly, you can go to either the FACE body itself or the FACE ombudsman, and you can lodge a complaint, be detailed, say what happened, when it happened, how it happened, etc. But then all these parties, including us who have applied, are now obviously held liable by these bodies, and we need to respond. So you have formal recourse to a regulator, and I think that's a big game changer. So, this is only used by the centralized exchanges. The decentralized exchanges do not need to be regulated at this stage, but we implore everybody to make use of the centralized exchanges because you have this recourse, and I think that's a very important point.
Right, and as a regulated exchange, you would obviously be supplying reports on a monthly basis about your activities. So you're getting checked on basically every month.
That's right. And we will also get site visits from time to time. These are very detailed. They go into your operational bank accounts. They go into your third-party bank accounts. They go into your wallets. We've built a lot of infrastructure within Binance to avail this information in the format that the regulators require. So obviously take this very seriously. But this gets reported on extensively.
And of course, one of the big things they look at is security. We're talking about digital assets. So everybody thinks of hacks and the potential for that. So this is one of the most important things that they're looking at, right?
That's it. So is the crypto really there? We've created this site, I've mentioned this previously, coinmarketcap.com, which lists all the exchanges. A lot of them, I know some of the South African exchanges also publish their reserves separately, which again, I think should be encouraged, and I think they've done a good job there. But as part of user research to educate yourself on the space, please visit this website, have a look at the exchanges. If you go to our exchange page on CoinMarketCap, you can see the top 10 coins we hold. We encourage all the other exchanges to publish that as well. So, it's not a case of someone having 1% of Bitcoin, 2% of Tether, and the rest is just altcoins. You can see the mix as well. And the wallet addresses are published as well, so you can verify that for yourself independently.
Okay. Now, I want to turn to adoption. Every time that there's been a bull market in crypto prices, as we've seen over the last year and a bit, you tend to see an increase in the number of people getting excited about Bitcoin and about cryptos generally. Are you seeing this at the moment?
Yes, we are. And I've seen this across a number of data points, Kiran. So the first one is our global adoption. Binance now have 186 million users. That's a big number. South Africa is one of our smaller markets, but we've now passed the 1 million mark as well this week, which is a big milestone for us and something to be very proud of. About 15% of those users are active daily, which again, I think is a very good number. And obviously that extends across the crypto space in South Africa. You then look at trends over the last year. I mean, we've seen a 58% increase in new registrations over the last year. And on a 2-year basis, about 51%. So again, very healthy adoption. We also see healthy increases in RAND deposits onto the platform. There we've had a very good partnership with a company called Stitch for about a year and a half now. That works really well. So across all these metrics, we see that. We also see it globally. How do we explain this theoretically? It's something called Metcalfe's Law. And I think this is what makes Bitcoin difficult to value. But you need to look at Metcalfe's Law, which explains the adoption of technology and the formation of networks over a period of time. I think once you get your head over that and you understand how that works, you really start to think how this thing moves. And I think we've got a long way to go. I think the parabolic part of that adoption curve, it will only start as part of this halving cycle.
Right. Metcalfe's Law basically saying that if you've got a network of, say, 1 million people, who are using a phone company, it was originally designed to measure or value phone companies. You add one user to 1 million, the base that you've already got. It's not the value doesn't increase by just 1 over a million. It increases much more than that because all of those million people now have an extra person that they can engage with. It increases the entire network in a logarithmic fashion. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not about the number of nodes, so to speak, but the connection between the nodes. And I think that's the powerful part of the equation.
And you see this is happening now to Bitcoin and crypto generally. We're starting to see the real effects of Metcalfe's Law kicking in.
Yes, we do. We see that across the space now and increasing, which is obviously part of the appeal.
A lot of people would be saying, and I get this from emails, people phoning, but Bitcoin's gone too high. It's at more than R1 million. It's 1.3 million. It's too late. I've missed the boat. They think they're buying a share. What would you say to them?
I would say, no, zoom out, look at the bigger picture. I think we've got a long way to go. I think somewhere in the future, Bitcoin will hit $1 million. I don't know when that will be. That's anybody's guess. Everybody wished they were there in 2010 when Bitcoin was mined for the first time and everything. Life doesn't work that way. But if you look at each of the cycles provides opportunities. And it provides you an opportunity to get in. It provides you an opportunity, if you get it right, to get out. Not at the top, because no one gets out of the top. Only one person gets out of the top, but before the top. But it gives you the opportunity to educate yourself in terms of how this works. There's a much bigger ecosystem behind crypto than just Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a dominance of roughly about 50% at this stage, but there's a number of, I think in that top 10 coins, a number of coins that's worthwhile holding, in my opinion. And a lot of them got lower adoption curves at this stage. So again, we encourage everybody to do their research and look into, let's say, the top 10 coins and how those underlying business models work. It's truly fascinating.
Right. And again, they can go to coinmarketcap.com, which will give them the top 10, in fact, the top 100 coins if they want to measure them by market cap.
That's correct.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a Binance development. That's news to me.
It is. I don't think it was originally ours. I think we acquired it. Talk under correction. It's kind of irrelevant, but we do maintain it. We maintain it actively, almost in real time. And that's to provide users with an independent source of information that they can verify. We obviously on our own website, we've got this as well, but it gives you that independent outlet.
Okay, final question. There are thousands, tens of thousands of cryptos out there. You maybe have kind of answered this one. Which ones people will get confused by that? How do they know what they should be looking at, where they should be looking?
I think if we knew what would be big this cycle, and again, none of us would be here, I would look at underlying business cases and specifically the white paper. Well, two things for me. The white paper that accompanies every project. Even the Binance Exchange, as big as we are, have an underlying white paper. The second thing is what we call tokenomics or monetary supply, is how many tokens is out there from the outset, how many could possibly be mined. We know in the case of Bitcoin, that's 21 million, and that available or remaining supply is now rapidly diminishing. So look at each of those. Look at how in that token economics, who owns it. If 80% of it is owned by the founders, that's not a good sign because they can dump it at any stage and then they flood the market and the project's most likely dead. However, if it's owned by some of the VCs, some of the founders and those on the smaller categories, and most of it has been listed already, that's quite a healthy sign. But then also look at where such a project features in its underlying industry. So if it's a decentralized exchange, let's take someone like Jupiter. Where does it feature in terms of volume? Where does it feature in terms of users? And I think also very importantly in terms of developers. How many developers are actively working on a project? And I think combining all of those, I kind of say to people, get your own scorecard going so you can make your decisions based on numbers and not emotions. And I think then you get to a decent answer.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and I think we're going to watch with great interest what happens to the price over the next weeks and months now that we are at the halving, the great halving event that happens every 4 years. I want to thank you, Hannes Wessels, Country Manager for Binance, for joining us on the MoneyWeb Crypto Podcast.